If you're responding to your child's anxiety like it's OCD, or if you're responding to their OCD like it's anxiety, you most likely are making their struggles worse. Hey, I saw you struggling to pick up the cup this morning, and I just want to talk to you about that. What is making it hard for you to pick up the cup? You think it's dirty? It's not dirty. Look, I just washed it. So next time that happens, just remember that I just washed it. It like literally just came out of the dishwasher, so it's completely clean. Hey, remember what I told you? Okay, that cup is completely clean. You can pick it up. Use your fingers, not your elbow. Use your fingers. You can do it. Just go ahead and pick it up now. This isn't going to work because you're treating OCD like it's anxiety. And when you do that and you try to rationalize and problem solve, you're just going to be spinning your wheels because OCD doesn't care about your rationalization or your problem solving because that's not how OCD works. Hi, my name is Natasha Daniels. I am an anxiety and OCD child therapist. I have 3 kids with these struggles. And if you're new to my channel, welcome, because I support you as you support your kids. This is the 3rd part of a 3-part series on anxiety versus OCD. The number one thing that goes wrong when we have kids with OCD is that we treat it like it's anxiety. Most people with anxiety aren't treating it like it's OCD. It's really important if you are raising a child who has OCD. You may not even know they have OCD, and you're treating it like anxiety, or even worse, the therapist is treating it like it's anxiety. Things are getting worse, not better. In my first 2 videos of this series, I talk about the fundamental difference between anxiety versus OCD. In the second video, I talk to you about how do you talk to your child's anxiety versus OCD, vastly different. And in this final video, we're going to talk about how do you execute that? What does it look like when you're actually trying to roll up your sleeves and help your child in your home who has anxiety versus OCD? The first step when it's anxiety is to figure out what is driving the fear. What is the core fear driving that anxiety? And then you want to reframe their thinking, reframe those cognitive distortions, the narrative that is fueling the anxiety. And the final part is you want to challenge anxiety. You want to let them move towards the fear instead of avoidance, one small step at a time by incentivizing that. These things are not linear. You're doing all 3 things at different times, multiple times, because new fears pop up. You're reframing new cognitive distortions. You're setting up new challenges. They're all moving parts to how you're going to crush your child's anxiety and how you're going to teach them, more importantly, to crush it themselves. So the first step is to understand their fear and see if they're willing to process and explore what's driving this anxiety. So I noticed that you're having a really hard time sleeping. And I want to talk to you about what is the scariest part about going to sleep at night. Okay, so the dark is really scary. That's normal. A lot of kids are afraid of the dark. What is the scariest part about the dark? Okay, so you think you can see shadows. All right. You're worried about someone coming through your window or breaking into our house. Okay, those are really scary things. So I appreciate you sharing that. The next step is we want to reframe those thoughts. So now we know the narrative that is fueling their anxiety, and I can work on reframing those with them. And so we're going to talk about those fears and look at it from a different angle. So we have an alarm system, and come over here. Let's go this way. You can see that we have a lock on the window. There's even a secure lock on the bottom. And we have a security system that I turn on every night so that if anybody opens any doors or windows, we'll get notified. So at night, this could definitely look like a person, which would make sense that you're scared, but you just have to take this off. How about we move your fan so it doesn't look like a person when it's dark out? So if we look at where your bedroom window is, it is all the way up there, and it is a long way from here. If I had a ladder, it would only come up to here, about here. And as you can see, that's still not going to get you up there to your bedroom. You're completely safe. So we debunked their fear that there's somebody in their room by playing a little bit of detective. We also reframed their thoughts about safety by showing them some concrete objective things that keep them safe, that aren't us, because sometimes when you say, I'm keeping you safe, you're actually making them have some separation anxiety, which we don't want to do. So we show them objective, external things that are keeping them safe. And the third thing that we did is we debunked a theory that someone can get into their second story bedroom. All of that helps to shift the narrative and give them an alternative perspective when they're sitting there in their bed late at night, worried about bad guys. And the final step, and actually one of the most important steps, is we're going to set up challenges and an incentive plan to encourage them to take some brave steps. So the more we avoid, the bigger your anxiety grows. So I think it'd be great if we can set up some bravery challenges. And we're going to start off really small. So tonight, I will lay with you like I normally do, but instead of you falling asleep and me creeping out, I'm going to leave while you're still awake, and we'll play that guided imagery that we talked about, and you can think of your green thoughts that we talked about. And to make it kind of fun, let's talk about what you can earn as well for being brave. Notice that we start off really small and we offer bravery points, or whatever you want to call them, that they can cash in for rewards, so that we have gamified it and made it fun and incentivized their ability to move towards their fears. We also remind them of the reframing thoughts that we worked on prior to this step, so that when they are anxious and they're in bed, they can think about these, reframe their thoughts. I talk about this as red thoughts and green thoughts if it's anxiety, and I actually have a whole video on that here, on how do we reframe our thoughts and think about red thoughts versus green thoughts, so that when they're doing these challenges, we're setting them up for success. Now on to OCD. When we're dealing with OCD, our goal is very different. Our first step is that we want to figure out the core fear or core feeling, because sometimes it's not a fear, sometimes it's a feeling like disgust or just right. And we want to figure out what is driving the OCD. The second step is we want to teach them how to delay or ignore their compulsions. Compulsions are the things that they do when they're getting intrusive thoughts or feelings. So I have an intrusive thought or feeling, and I have this need to do or avoid something to get brief relief. We call those compulsions. OCD is bossy, and it wants our kids to do something. It's not like anxiety, which says just avoid. And we go over that in the first video in this 3-part series. But I want to teach them that any resistance to what OCD demands is progress. So can they ignore it? If that's too hard, can they delay it? Building up that tolerance to resist OCD's demands is a really important step in OCD. The final component is bossing OCD back by purposely triggering OCD, doing exposures without doing the compulsion. So the first step is how to find out the core fear. We do actually have an entire video series on the power of the core fear, what it is, and how to figure out how to find it with your child. You can check out that entire playlist right here, and it's a really good one. So I would definitely check that out, because we're not going to dive into that deeply in this video. But my first step would be to understand what's driving the OCD. So I've noticed for some time now that you're avoiding touching some things. Like this morning, I noticed that you didn't touch the plastic cup. You were like using it with your elbow. Can you tell me what's the hardest part about touching some of these things? Because they're plastic? Are all the things that you're not touching around the house plastic? Oh, I didn't notice that. Okay, well, that's helpful to know. What is the scariest or hardest part about touching plastic? It's carcinogenic? Okay, you read that? So that's scaring you. So you don't want to get cancer. All right, well, that helps me understand what's going on behind this behavior. The next step is to educate my child on how OCD grows. OCD grows, the fuel to OCD's fire are the compulsions you're doing. So when OCD is bossy and is telling you what to do, when you resist that on any level, even if you delay it for just a brief period of time, that's power. So I'm going to educate them on how OCD grows, and then I'm going to encourage them to delay or ignore their compulsions. So the trickiest part about OCD is that the more you do what OCD wants you to do, or avoid what OCD wants you to avoid, the bigger it grows. And so you want to ask yourself, what does OCD want me to do or avoid? OCD is bossy. And so the first step is not giving in to what OCD wants. And that might be really hard. So you might want to just even delay doing what OCD wants. I noticed that you're washing your hands a lot too. What if you started to delay the hand washing? Even if you can only delay it for 30 seconds, that is more than just automatically doing what OCD wants. The final step, and a very important step, is doing OCD exposures. ERP, exposure response prevention, is a go-to therapy approach that OCD therapists use to help kids with OCD and adults with OCD. And when we partner with the therapist and we do ERP at home, it can be very, very powerful. And so with ERP, we are slowly and systematically exposing them to their OCD trigger and building up their tolerance to sit with that discomfort without doing the compulsion. That part is very key. Similar to anxiety, we want to gamify this. And so offering incentives and bravery points for our kids to incentivize them to walk towards their discomfort, to resist OCD, to delay it, ignore it, and then definitely incentivizing them to do exposures is a missing ingredient sometimes that people don't include that kind of can sabotage this whole process. We have to make it fun. We have to gamify it. We have to incentivize in order to move the dial. All right, so we're just going to put the plastic bags on your legs, and then you're just going to briefly touch it and then not wash your hands, okay? Ready? Let's go. Okay, great. Now, in my core fear series, I do talk about how you can take that core fear and layer that on top of exposure to make it even more effective. Because when we're not tackling the core fear in exposures, we're just, stomping out ants without really getting to the queen ant. And so watch this playlist and learn about the core fear and how to weave that into exposures if you're going to be doing them at home in partnership with a therapist. Now, notice with OCD, I didn't rationalize or problem solve. I didn't try to give them a different way of looking at the plastic or why plastic doesn't cause cancer. I didn't argue with OCD because you'll never win an argument with OCD. Instead, I moved into teaching about what OCD is, how it demands that they do a compulsion, how to resist, delay, and ignore those compulsions, and how to push back into exposures. So we were missing that whole component that we do for anxiety. Being a coach to our kids with anxiety and OCD is tough. We have to deal with our own emotions, our own anxiety, irritation, overwhelm in order to be there with purpose and intention for our kids. And I know that is really tricky. And I have a whole free series that is just starting on how to anchor yourself so you can be effective for your kids. So learning how to ground yourself, deal with your own triggers so that you can be present. Join us at atparentingsurvivalseries.com. I'm also going to be doing in my next video coming up next week, my favorite app that will make incentive programs and bravery points super easy in your home. So stay tuned for that. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified because it will be coming out next Wednesday. Don't forget to find the sparkle in everything you do, and I'll talk to you again next week. Take care.